Today we're going to tackle chapter 14. Next week we'll tackle the last chapter. And then we'll start counseling. Then you will start counseling. So how are we going to do this? Well, what you're going to do is make contact with a fellow student, one of your cohorts in the class, and you will trade counseling sessions back and forth. He will counsel, the other person will counsel your character, and then you will counsel his character. But in order to do this, you need to turn in your character histories. I only have 5. I think there's 20 of you, if I'm not mistaken. So I've only got a quarter of them. If you don't have a character, you can't do any counseling, and of course that's 100 points, plus the 100 points that you get from your paper, which covers the problem that your client has, so that you know how to act when you're being counseled. And this is how we're going to finish up the semester. So next week will be the last lecture, um, and you will need to start doing some counseling and getting your character histories in. That would be nice. Your midterm grades. Your midterm grades were based on the work that you did. If Right now, this is Saturday night. I don't have to turn in the grades until Tuesday, so I'll try to get all the grading done. I'm sure I'll get most of the grading done, and definitely in your class. Um, so your grades are based on the work that you've done up to this point. I do not count off for late work, so you can turn in your stuff anytime you want, but if you don't have your character history done, then it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough for you to pass a class, for one thing, but it's also going to be tough if you turn it in, 3 days before the end of the semester, because how are you going to find 10 people that want to do counseling with you in 3 days, especially when they're taking finals and whatnot? So you really need to get this done. I have finally, I had to look it up again, but I finally created a Dropbox for the character histories. So you can put your history there. In order for me to, I need to put it in the discussion area. So the way that I will grade you is that you will put your counseling notes under the client's name. And of course, I'll be able to see who you are. And I'm not really going to grade your counseling notes. Everybody does it differently. Some people do it using shorthand, um, so that other people can't read their notes. But I'm not going to grade your notes. I just need to know that you did it, and that's one of the reasons why you need to put your counseling notes under your client's name, not your character's name, but the character's name of the person that you counseled. So that's how we're going to do it, and good luck. I want everybody to pass the class, so it would be nice if everybody turned in a character history. And like I said, I just created a Dropbox. Now I'll just have to remember to check it from time to time. I'm laughing because I'm teaching 5 classes and keeping 6 classes, I'm sorry, and keeping up with everything is a bit of a trick. Um, but I try my best. If you have any questions, I do have office hours. Monday and Tuesday, my office hours are in the afternoon, 3 to 5. And on Wednesday and Thursday, they are in the morning from 8 to 10, your mountain time. So you'll have to do the math if you don't live in mountain time. Anyway, okay, so let's go ahead and get started. Please get your character histories in. And don't forget to give your character a fictitious name. Maybe. There we go. Okay. Taking action. All right. The practitioner needs to learn specifics about the problem, such as where the problem occurs, who is involved, what are the immediate antecedents and consequences, what meanings are attributed to the problem. Understanding the environment can require further exploration. Family, neighborhood, school, agencies, significant groups, organizations, culture, race, socioeconomic class of the client. All of these things are important to understanding what the client's going through. When I first started studying counseling in the middle 70s, action plans were either developed by the counselor or the agency the counselor worked with. This was a bit of a trick because what you would do, you would get a client, you would interview the client the first time, and then you would bring the client's history the counseling group, to the agency, and they would be the ones that would create the action plans. And a lot of times they didn't fit. A lot of times you didn't agree with what they wanted you to do. A lot of times the client didn't like what they wanted to do, but they were not client driven. They were not even counselor driven. They were agency driven. And this was the way they were doing things back in the 70s. So when I was trained to do this, my first clients, I didn't really have a whole lot of control over what happened in the beginning. But of course, and this is one of the reasons I got into a little bit of trouble, when I thought the client needed something that wasn't identified by the agency, I made sure that the client was fixed. We dealt with the client the way that the client felt like they needed to be dealt with, and the way that I felt that the client needed to be dealt with. That didn't always agree with the agency, and sometimes I got in trouble because I wasn't in lockstep with what the agency wanted me to do. But I felt like, and the client always felt better about how we were dealing with things. Clients were thought to be too downtrodden to be able to help. Actually, there was a bit of arrogance that was taking place in the 70s. They didn't think they were intelligent enough. They hadn't gone to school like they had. They didn't have the knowledge base. But the reality is that a lot of the people at the agencies didn't really care about the clients. They wanted to use a cookie cutter action plans that they had developed. Uh, and a lot of times they didn't work. And of course, as indigenous peoples, you know that a lot of times the federal government will do the same thing with individuals, minorities, other minorities, uh, Hispanic populations and African American populations. They will assume all minorities are the same. They ain't white, so everybody acts the same. That was the idea. It was especially bad back in the 1970s, and it was even worse down in the South. And I was doing my training in Lubbock, Texas, and there were a lot of very arrogant people down there. Now, the funny thing was that a lot of the individuals that I was working with were actually from the north. And what would happen, we would get friction between the people coming down we had a pair that came down from Wisconsin. There was a guy that came in from Minnesota. There was a lady from Pennsylvania. There was a lady from Illinois. And a lot of times, people just didn't agree with the counselors from Lubbock, Texas. And of course, they claimed that they knew the people in Lubbock better than anybody else did. And they claimed that they knew the um, minority populations because we hadn't dealt with them before. Well, actually, most of us had dealt with the minority populations, but not in Lubbock, Texas. Lots of arguments taking place. Uh, but we all survived, I guess. And depending on how bullheaded you were, and I'm pretty bullheaded, we helped the client as much as we possibly. I helped the client as much as I possibly could, and tried to dodge around the what they were trying to tell me to do if I didn't think it was correct, and the client wouldn't put up with it anyway. So that's what was going on. Now things are a little bit better because that's not the way we treat our clients anymore. Steps identified by clients involve clients in developing an action plan. They're the ones that are hurting. They're the ones that need the help. So, and they're the experts on themselves. It strengthens working relationships and teaches clients skills. Families and groups all need to contribute. Ask clients which steps they see as difficult. Steps suggested by one member of the family or group may seem easy to one and not to others. And of course, that it's interesting if you're dealing with the family. A lot of times, Dad will say, "Well, I think we should do it this way." And if you did it that way, then it would be easy for the dad, and it would be difficult for everybody else. And you would tend to get that with the parents, especially if it was a child's problem. Mom and dad wouldn't agree. That's one of the reasons why they were coming in. And you would come up with, hopefully, you would come up with some kind of a compromise. And hopefully, you would come up with something that actually helped the child and didn't focus on mom or dad. Steps suggested by one member. Okay. The steps that must be small enough that everyone can feel like they can work on the issue. One of the tricks that we use is that we try to take baby steps instead of big, long steps. That was a problem with the agency. They wanted you to fix people as quickly as you possibly could, so that you could accumulate a large client um, folder. Past successes can help identify steps and strengths. The practitioner can use exception finding questions to identify steps. This is similar to the goal setting process. Exception finding questions. Recall a time when the problem did not occur, and let's identify what you were doing at that time. Brainstorm as many steps as possible without critiquing them. Evaluate each possible step. Organize steps by prioritizing what is first, second, and etc. The clients need to see value in each step. This isn't busy work that we're dealing with here. Everything has to aim toward the goal and lead toward the goal. It is essential to work with clients on how they can use their strengths and capacities and resources at each step. The client needs to think about other times when they have faced new tasks. Organizing and creating incremental steps helps ensure success and helps the client to gain confidence. This process also teaches clients the process of creating plans to achieve goals. And a lot of times what they will do is they'll say, I need to lose 15 pounds. I'll start dieting today. Well, okay, you can start dieting today, but you need to tell yourself the first week, I want to maintain my weight. I don't want to gain any weight. The next week, I want to lose 1 pound. The next week, I want to maintain that weight. In other words, you need to take baby steps. You don't need to tell yourself, I need to lose 5 pounds in the first week. That step is too large, and that means that you're going to be hurting yourself, and you'll probably not stick with your diet. I'm just using that as an example, of course. The practitioner needs to evaluate whether the client is satisfied with their progress. The practitioner can reuse the monitoring system that was established in goal setting. How happy are you with what we're doing? Little progress may relate to whether the client felt goals were attainable or highly valued. the progress made may seem slower to the practitioner should always emphasize positive steps. And this is what I've always told my kids, uh, my own children. You got to keep moving in a positive direction, even if it's a failure. You still need to move in a positive direction. You flunked out of school, fine. You need to maintain your job and to think maybe you should have gotten into another program, or maybe there's another program that you like better. Maybe you didn't spend enough time on it because you were not in a program that you were enjoying. And if you don't enjoy it, you're not going to do it. You're going to be watching television rather than actually doing your homework. Really kind of interesting because my son, I think I told you this last time, my son watches television while he does his homework, and the kid's a math major, and he's doing these math problems that make absolutely no sense to anybody except him and the professor. So, and I knew that he was that's where he needed to be because he was able to watch television and do his math problems and do it correctly. I watched him through high school. I watched him working on his undergraduate degree, and when he was working in a class that he didn't really like, which he was probably not a math class, then I saw him watching a lot more television than doing his homework. But sometimes he wouldn't even, he'd have it on for and watch show after show after show, and not actually look at the television set because he was concentrating so much on his homework. Um, and people can do that with music. You're looking for black background noise. You're trying to block out all this extraneous noise by using headphones and using music. If you're listening to the music, then you're not doing your homework. If you're doing your homework and not listening to the music, then that's the field you need to be in. Monitoring progress. What steps have you taken since our last meeting to move towards your goals? In the last week, what did each of you do to help make your time together go well? Make a fun week. Between now and the next time we meet, I want you to find one aspect of your behavior that went well and that you'd like to continue doing. I'm not sure what that joke has to do with that. After talking to your boss, how did you feel about yourself? Will you tell us about what you did that made things go better this week in your family, besides cutting the turkey? So what do they have for supper? Let's see. I'm not sure what that is. It looks like watermelon. There's the turkey. This is peas. That's Brussels sprouts, I think. They got something over here. She's got rolls in her hands, and there's a tub of gravy. It must be Christmas. We have been working together for a few weeks now. Let's focus on what we have accomplished. Teaching, skills to enhance achievement of steps. Teaching can convey information. New information might help clients achieve their goals. Teaching can take place in session, workshop, etc. Teaching might involve diversity issues, resolving conflicts, making decisions, and/or leading a group. Role-playing or rehearsing can be useful. Practicing a new behavior in a safe environment increases confidence. And of course, that's one of the things you're going to be doing with your mock counseling. You're going to be practicing new behavior in a safe environment. You're going to be role-playing, and that's a good thing. During the action phase, it is appropriate and sometimes necessary for the practitioner to be directive. Being directive involves asking clients to do something new or to go in a different direction. And that's okay. A lot of new counselors, they do this a little bit more than they probably should. The more, if you want your client to actually do what you want them to do, they need to come up with the idea. If they come up with the idea, they're more likely to do it. This happened to me over the summer. I think I told you about my colleague coming back from Bangladesh. He's actually from Bangladesh. And he was coming back to the States, and he wanted me to find him a house and to find him a car. And so I helped him as much as I possibly could, but I didn't make any decisions for him. And of course, it's a collectivist society, so he actually wanted me to make decisions for him, and I wouldn't do that because I knew that if I decided what kind of car he had, then he wouldn't be happy with it, and if I decided where he should live, he wouldn't be happy with it. So I made sure that he was the one that made the decisions about his car and about his living arrangements. And he's complained about both of them. So it's a good thing I didn't select his car and his apartment. He got to do that himself. Imagine you are talking to your wife now. Tell her what you want her to know. I notice you are directing your comments to me in the group. Would you look at several others while you were sharing? Between now and our next session, will you keep track of one thing you do for yourself each day? Reframing is inviting a different perspective. A practitioner invites clients to see experiences, feelings, thoughts, behaviors, or situations in a new way. And I use this a lot. I use reframing a lot. Well, let's look at that from a different perspective, is usually what I tell my clients. Well, I haven't had clients for a while, but anyway, let's look at this from a different point of view. Reframing can increase success in achieving action steps. Reframing can use questions to invite clients to see things differently. Reframing encourages clients to think about something they have avoided. And that's usually why I reframe, is because a lot of times they're talking about a topic, but they are actually avoiding something. Maybe his disruptive behavior in class is an indication that he is bored. Identifying discrepancies is similar to confrontation. By identifying discrepancies, it usually involves a behavior that is moving the client away, not toward a desired behavior. This is very, how do I say this? This is very Freudian. This is very psychoanalytic. Noticing discrepancies, that's one of the things that psychoanalysis does. That's okay. Just because you're identifying discrepancies doesn't mean that you're a full-blown Freudian, but that was one of the techniques used in psychoanalysis. You're talking about being scared, but you're smiling. Previously, it seemed like we had reached an agreement, and now I hear you are not ready to do that. You said you wanted your son to move home, but you are also shaking your head no. Skills to enhance achievement of steps. Discrepancies can include what a client is saying or doing and what the practitioner is noticing. And this is what I usually see, is the fact that they're not acting the way that they're talking. What the client is saying and what the practitioner heard the client say another time, and this is very common as well, they will disagree with themselves. They were arguing one side of the argument before, now they're arguing the other side of the argument. What the client is saying in the meeting and the client's actions outside the meeting, that's fairly common as well. What the client says is important or is the goal and his or her behavior. So they're acting, do as I say and not as I do. Feedback can be in the form of stating what the practitioner sees and hears, sharing an awareness of what the clients are showing nonverbally or expressing in their tone of voice, Groups and family members can be invited to give feedback. I notice that you are smiling. You look like you're about to cry. I notice your hands are clenched. I think the team is beginning to agree as I see heads nodding. Self-disclosure can be used to share personal information, observations, and opinions to give the client a different perspective or offer an illustration or example. The information from the self-disclosure may be about the practitioner's personal experience or his or her experience of the client. Self-disclosure should only be used when the relationship is strong. Self-disclosure should be employed sparingly. Goals of self-disclosure enhance or preserve the relationship. The practitioner's needs do not take precedence. It's used for the benefit of the client. Always used for the benefit of the client. If it doesn't fit, then you're working on yourself rather than the client. And this is one of the things you have to be really careful of. I know I talk about myself all the time. I'm trying to use myself as an example. It's not always a positive example, but I'm hoping to help you. I want you to think about things a little bit differently. Ethical concern of self-disclosure can be a way of subtly including personal values into the interactions, and I'm hoping I don't do that. When responding to direct and personal questions, a practitioner should consider what led the client to ask the questions. Is it an effort to change the relationship to something less professional? And that is something you need to be careful of. A question may be a way of asking for advice. It also may be a way of, and this has happened to me, it may be a way of trying to change the subject. A good way of changing the subject. When I have had female clients, sometimes they have pretended to flirt with me so that I will stop probing to get the information that I'm looking for. And this is not that uncommon. They were hoping that I would assume that it's the second one, but normally I'm pretty not real bright about people flirting with me. So I was always looking for an ulterior motive rather than flirtation. And so I probably missed a lot of flirtations. I might have insulted some people, but I was always assuming that they were trying to change the subject. And that's very, very common, using flirtation to get people to stop probing into an area that is more sensitive than they want to be in. Self-disclosure can enhance the genuineness of the relationship, and that's one of the things I try to be as genuine as possible when I'm counseling. Immediacy is where the practitioner comments on what seems to be happening currently in the relationship. Immediacy can help the client understand other relationships. Immediacy involves the practitioner sharing his or her own thoughts and feelings. Immediacy is about what is happening in the moment with the client. And that is the end of chapter 14. Next week will be the last chapter. It's not a very long one. And then we'll start counseling. So get your character histories in if you haven't turned them in. And I'll talk to you next week.